Thank you so much, Denise, and good morning or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are, and thank you for attending today. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend it with us. My name is Ron Gabodla, and I'm responsible for industry marketing over here at NetSuite, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you over the next hour about how innovators run the #1 cloud ERP. So just to give you a little bit of perspective on our plan for the day, I'm going to give some quick introductions, talking about how we can help you crush your barriers to growth. And I'm really going to spend the bulk of the time speaking to Michael Vigario from Bisnow Media about their experience and what their situation looks like, about upgrading from Sage Intacct to NetSuite, and what that looked like. So with that, let's get started. So, of course, Michael will be joining us in a moment to talk more about his experience, and it's a great little picture of him, and I'm there on the right-hand side. So to begin with, today's business world has tons of opportunities for new business models, new products, and new technologies to capitalize on. But with new opportunities, there are modern-day threats, big, scary threats that are blocking access to the opportunity on the other side. I kind of love this graphic. It kind of really just depicts this idea of that opportunity being there, but that big, scary threat that's blocking access to it. Now, the reality is this is impacting everyone. As of today, the Fortune 500 are experiencing a 5x decrease in life expectancy, while small businesses are seeing a 50% failure rate within 5 years. As a result, it's incumbent upon all companies to consider how they meet those challenges that are in front of them. Now, to succeed in the face of the threats of the modern business world, you have to grow. You have to push beyond these barriers to growth, to find new customers, to unlock new revenue streams, to achieve new operational efficiencies, and tackle regulations, whether it's basic local tax laws or ASC 606. You have to build a great team and pretty much prepare yourself for anything. And you need the technology to be able to do so. Now, hopefully most of you on this call already know who NetSuite is, but I'll just give you a little bit of perspective on it. Now, NetSuite has been operating since 1998, and our mission has always been to help entrepreneurs build amazing and enduring businesses. We've been operating on this mission and continue to thrive in the marketplace with over 40,000 organizations that trust NetSuite to run their business day in and day out. And we've been delivering on the notion of a suite across multiple industries and delivering them business management software that enables that success. And last year, we were acquired by Oracle for over $9.3 billion, but we still operate as an independent business unit to continue on the success that we built up. Now, as many of you know, running a successful business is about dealing with those threats and those opportunities. It's about putting your company and your people in the right position to deal with those situations when they fortunately or unfortunately arise. Now, every business has a different next. In today's economy, nexts are coming at a frightening rate. And businesses need to be able to react in weeks and months, not years, in order to take advantage of the opportunity and squash those threats. And those different opportunities are things like global expansion or adding new products or adding subscription services. Sometimes it's about being able to deal with those regulations like I mentioned, like 606. The point is every next is different. And your company's future depends on your stage of growth and on your industry. And whatever your next is, you must have the systems in place to meet those associated challenges. However, solving that next is often quite difficult, with a myriad of siloed business systems that affect how quickly you can move and meet the challenges in front of you. Unfortunately, this spaghetti mess of systems that, with brittle connections is the reality of what many organizations face, and it becomes next to impossible to be able to meet that challenge. Now, NetSuite set out to solve this issue, and we wanted to make sure we delivered on 3 fundamental things. First, to build a system to run a whole business, not just one single department or function. Second, we wanted to deliver that solution over the internet, on demand, in the cloud, so they can be accessed and updated anywhere and in real time. And lastly, we wanted to provide a solution to accommodate the idea of buying and selling over the internet. Now, when we started, that was kind of a crazy idea. Now, everyone just thinks about that as natively. Now, to give you a little bit of perspective about who NetSuite is, there are really 5 tenets or 5 pieces that I'm going to walk through here quickly. First and foremost, NetSuite is cloud first and cloud only. Now, what that means is it has all the tenets you would associate with a real cloud solution. You need to be able to access it from any device, anytime, anywhere. But it also has to be consumer-oriented and be able to easy for anyone to pick up and use without extensive training. And hopefully Michael can be able to talk about this and what they've been able to leverage at Bisnow. The second is that it's also was built to run a business. Now, there's a lot of cloud products out there, a lot of people that claim to be cloud products, but many of them were built to just run a department or build to run just, say, finance or run sales, but not be able to run the entire business. And that was really something that we set out to do from day one. Now, the second piece of this, though, is it's also is this notion of being able built on a single data source. Our unified data model allows organizations to be able to analyze their organization the way that they need to, and it also allows everyone to make sure that we're on the same release and that you have the ability to customize it as you need to. Third is, of course, as I mentioned, all the functionality that an organization needs. So not just commerce and ERP and financials, but also supply chain management and CRM and also human capital management to manage the people side of the organization. And of course, then One World, as you need to move to multiple countries, to multiple subsidiaries, you need to be able to handle that. And last but not least is being able to be built for your industry. And in my role of being in charge of industry marketing, I get to work with a lot of customers across a lot of different industries. And that's one of the really great things about NetSuite is that we operate across all these different industries, whether you're talking about software or services or advertising or nonprofit, or of course, in this example, media and publishing. And then, of course, wholesale distribution and retail. The point is that we've been able to help organizations across all of these different industries, and we've been able to help provide them success. So what I'd like to do now is take the opportunity to go ahead and introduce Michael, have him come on and talk a little bit about Bisnow Media. And we'll spend really the bulk of the time talking about Bisnow Media, what their experiences have been, and really what's happening over there. So, Michael, if you're able to speak up, if you can give just a little bit of introduction to yourself, and then talk a little bit about Bisnow Media, it'd be great.
Yep, all set. Thanks a lot for handing that over. So I'm obviously the accounting professional here at Bisnow. I've been at Bisnow for about 1.5 years now. Previously did a bunch of accounting jobs, from everything in public accounting to private accounting at a few startups and a few large corporations. I came over to Bisnow for a chance to not only lead a team, but also make changes, make processes more efficient here within the company. So Bisnow was founded in 2005 to sort of fill a hole in the commercial real estate industry, that hole being news. Previously, the commercial real estate news was all printed publications that were sent around, things like The Real Deal and other deal books like that. The founders of Bisnow wanted to be able to have the commercial real estate industry access that news in real time on the internet, seeing that the world was moving towards the internet, which I think is a theme of this presentation with NetSuite as well. So what Bisnow does is put together a bunch of commercial real estate news, city-specific and asset-specific, and then gives access to everyone online. In addition to that, we host events around the country, so in about 40 cities or so around the country, to the tune of north of 300 events. Some are half-day events, some are full-day events, and we even host multi-day retreats. Our specialty is these local events that are 3 to 4 hours and really hone in on one specific topic. For example, healthcare in Boston, so healthcare commercial real estate in Boston, or something like downtown Manhattan and the evolution of downtown Manhattan. So we'll host events on these specific things. We have about 80 so employees now. I think we might be up to about 85. And revenue of about $23 million in 2017, which has been great growth over the past few years.
And Michael, I just want to follow up on one thing on the event side. So are these for everybody? Who goes to these events? Are these is it people like you and me, or who attends these things?
Generally speaking, it's either if you're interested in commercial real estate, it could be something as simple as you want to rent an apartment in Long Island City, so you're interested in how that particular borough and area of New York City is moving forward, so you can get an idea of prices, of what other projects are coming up in the space. Maybe you don't think there's enough retail space there, so there's a retail-specific event or something like that. Or it's everyone in the entire commercial real estate ecosystem. That ecosystem can include architects, general contractors, developers, even the entities that are sitting in the retail space. So if you think about a Macy's, Amazon taking up space in different places and all these types of things. So it's actually a pretty broad range. As you think of commercial real estate affects pretty much everyone's life. Well, definitely everyone's life on a daily basis, from the offices we work in to the places we live and the places we shop.
So, I assume, you just described a little bit about kind of your business model and what that looks like, but maybe we can spend a little bit more time on that. I mean, let's start though with you got this tagline, almost never boring. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the idea when Bisnow was first created was to take commercial real estate, a historically stodgy, slow-moving, slow-to-innovate type of industry, and make it something more accessible to everyone. Even the lowest level commercial real estate employees can now access the news right away without paying a ton for a subscription to a particular publication or waiting for their bosses to finish reading their publication and pass it down, all these different types of things. So what we tried to do was make the news fun and exciting and engaging, because now we're engaging with a younger audience as well. It's not only written for the VPs and the presidents of different companies, but also written for that associate or that analyst. And in doing so, have to keep the content as interesting as possible. Obviously, with millennials filling a bunch of these positions, interest definitely comes into play. So some of the things that we like to do that are almost never boring are things such as writing pieces on a particular developer and what he does on his free time, or making sure the pictures that we're including of speakers to our events aren't just the regular black and white circular headshot photo, but maybe something like that person jet skiing or one of those types of things. We try to keep everything as lively and fresh as we can. Our events will have music from today, not elevator music or something that you'd see in a normal hotel ballroom. So just some of these simple things, simple changes, just to keep it more up to date and upbeat.
I want to go. It sounds like I need to go and attend one of these and get some lessons about what makes some interesting events. How do you monetize these? Does it cost money? What's the program there in terms of your revenues?
Yep. So we charge attendees for attendance at these events, but our 3 or 4 hour morning events range from, depending on the time of buying, but range from anywhere $60 to $100, generally speaking. So very affordable events that allow you access to networking. You get fed breakfast, and you get a bunch of content up on stage that's perhaps teaching you things you may not have known about the commercial real estate industry, whether it's where it is now or the direction and where it's going. And then we also have sponsors sponsor these events. So someone may sponsor the breakfast, someone may sponsor a panel on stage about something very specific. A legal team can maybe sponsor a panel on stage around where regulations are going in a particular area, because zoning, of course, impacts commercial real estate quite a bit. So we'll be able to monetize these events from both of those areas.
That sounds that's pretty interesting, and I don't think I really, like you said, it's commercial real estate isn't necessarily something that you you think about in terms of an exciting area per se, but it sounds like you guys are really changing the game and making it pretty interesting. Well, just to kind of change gears a little bit. Oh, sorry, Michael. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. I was just absolutely agreeing with you, making it affirmative.
Well, just to change gears a little bit, so you've been at Bisnow for a while, and you guys, part of this was you guys you upgraded from Intacct and moved into a new system. And when you were looking for a new system, can you talk to us just a little bit about what were some of the drivers that really were kind of forcing you to look for a new system? I mean, no one necessarily wants to go get new software, but what were kind of some of the things happening at Bisnow that kind of really were driving some of that decision-making process?
Yep. So when I came over to Bisnow, one of the mandates in bringing me over was to take a fresh set of eyes to our entire accounting and finance processes and see where we could find efficiencies, see how we can get better reporting, more timely reporting, and just keep mistakes to a minimum. So with that being my essentially reason for being Bisnow, it was time for me to take a look at every single process that was in place. One of the biggest processes, of course, is the accounting system. Bisnow was previously using Intacct, so I dug in and saw what was automated, what wasn't automated, and where the business was going forward, and how we could best structure it so that Bisnow can gain the most efficient processes that we could possibly get, given the size of our team, which still to this day is only 4 people. So that was my attempt, was to take a step back and look at everything. Better automation was absolutely one of the most important things I was looking for. A lot of things being done were very manual, done in Excel outside the system, and then not even imported usually, but actually manually tagged and differentiated. The company was on the cusp of going global when I joined. I joined in July of 2016, and we expanded to London, so across the pond. In our first event held there was November of 2016, so I think there's a little bit of a ramp-up period prior to that, so I was pretty much just in time for that expansion. And then also seeing the way our accounting system integrated with Salesforce, which we use for all our sales, Braintree, which we use for our ticket settlement, and our banking platform, which previously we had a whole host of bank accounts. Seeing how these systems interacted was a bit concerning for me, to say the least. And basically, as you can see here on the slide, to alleviate reliance on spreadsheets was one of my bigger things. Goes back to the better automation of the first point. And then, of course, reporting and automating as much as we can, including revenue recognition. So these were the drivers of my decision process in total. But again, all driven by the mandate to make the accounting function more efficient.
All makes sense, and I definitely want to dive into a few of these as we go through this. But that's good background kind of on this point. Talk a little bit more. So challenges. As you mentioned, number one mandate: get more efficient. Need to automate more. So talk a little bit about some of your challenges that you had at that point, and kind of what were some of those challenges?
So Bisnow has a lean startup type feel company. Even though we're bigger now and about 80 to 85 people, it still has the feel of a really small company, a lot of camaraderie, all that. So we're not necessarily looking to hire a team of 8 accounting professionals to do AP, AR, to do revenue recognition, invoicing, and all these different things. So in order to work under those guidelines, you essentially have to become as efficient as possible. Some of the things that were happening with Intacct, couldn't support, out of the box, Intacct couldn't support the global expansion. So that was something we needed to add on, another module, which of course makes the system more expensive. The integration with Salesforce was not ideal, and that caused the team, again, a small team, to have to do a lot of manual processes outside of the system. So this took up a bunch of time and didn't allow for as efficient running of the processes. And that speaks to automation. The integration and automation kind of go hand in hand as far as I see it. And then the revenue recognition process is the thing that when I first came in saw as the most striking issue. The revenue recognition was all done in Excel spreadsheets outside of the system, wasn't necessarily tied to the way invoice is being run. So the invoices were going out one way separately, and then the revenue recognition was being done in Excel completely separately. This was causing the team to lose, I'd say, 5 hours a week at least, probably, of 2 people, causing invoices to go out, causing client questions coming back, having to spend time responding to the question, saying, oh, you're being invoiced at this time because X, Y, and Z, even though maybe the event you had sponsored hasn't actually passed yet, or you haven't actually, we haven't run your advertisements in our email newsletters yet, but we're billing you now because that's just the way we're billing. So this caused a lot of confusion from the customer side and a lot of confusion internally and a lot of manual processes. So this was very major challenges that we had. And when we first started speaking to NetSuite, those are the first things I put on the table as, if you can solve these, we can maybe work together. Not guaranteed, but maybe. So that was basically the start of every conversation.
Hey, you got to set the baseline, and I'm glad that we were able to meet that. I'd like to drill down a little bit on this integration comment, because my sense, and that's why I wanted to get your perspective on it, is my sense is you're 85 people now. You described, you got Salesforce, you got Braintree, it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like you guys have this heavily customized, set of, environment that would really make integration a challenge. So just talk to me a little bit about, you said that, the integration was not ideal. It didn't provide some of those elements. What were some of those challenges with the integration with Salesforce, for example?
Yeah, so I think with the integration with Salesforce, it wasn't, it was set up for maybe a company that had 100 events or something like that, not necessarily a company that was doing 300, 400, hopefully at some point 500 events a year. So the problem was that Intacct wasn't designed to pull in a lot of the information that ideally we needed pulled in. That was one of the biggest problems, and in reaching out to Intacct and seeing if we could mess with mapping and add a few things to the mapping, it didn't seem possible, plausible, didn't seem like it was happening at all. And then when I started looking into NetSuite and saw all the Suite apps, I think that was one of the turning points in the discussions, one of the main turning points, because a Suite app and the fact that there were so many and the possibility to have so many more was really important to me, because that meant NetSuite, Oracle, the combination was investing in the platform and would likely have even more integrations for me to take advantage of in the future, as opposed to being stuck in some old processes and old mapping abilities.
That's definitely one of those areas that I feel like is a strength of ours. So it makes sense, and sorry that you guys had that challenge, but somebody else's challenge is definitely an opportunity for us. So just to kind of continue, then on those goals, and I think you kind of set with what you had as far as challenges, you kind of set that as the bar. But I want to just talk a little bit about, now Intacct is a cloud platform. Salesforce is obviously a cloud platform, but when you were then looking to solve these problems, did you set that out that you still wanted to keep cloud? Did you want to bring it in-house? Just if you can talk a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point, and I totally missed that on things that set the bar, because cloud was absolutely one of the things that was a non-starter. If a company wasn't a cloud platform, it just wasn't going to happen, mainly because our team is a little bit spread out as well. I sit here in New York. There are 2 junior accountants that sit in New York and often work remotely, and then we have a controller down in DC, and she sits full-time in DC. So in order for us to be on the same page at all times, the cloud is just absolutely necessary. We couldn't have housed it anywhere. And our IT department, speaking about lean companies, our IT department is relatively lean as well. And there are updates to the website, including ticketing and updates to our events platform, updates to our app, which is available on the App Store, and so many different updates that need to happen to keep the company functioning on its core mission that we would have never been able to build this and house this internally. So utilizing someone that already has the expertise and the efficiency in building out this system was something we were absolutely going to do.
Did you look? So I guess when you were, obviously you didn't just look at NetSuite, or maybe you did. I don't know. Did you look at other systems as well?
Yeah, it was really between NetSuite and Intacct. That was the final head-to-head race, so to speak.
Were there others that you'd evaluate and just kind of just discounted just because they didn't have the capabilities, or were was it kind of just you were looking for, you kind of were able to narrow it down pretty quickly?
Yeah, I was able to narrow it down pretty quickly. The two, NetSuite and Intacct, were really the two that would be able to provide us with what we needed and have support externally and internally.
Makes sense. And then just kind of lastly on that goal side of things. So you mentioned you just relatively recently moved across the pond to London. Was that something that when you were doing the evaluation, or you mentioned efficiency was the number one goal, but was this global expansion, was that something that you had already started embarking on, or was it kind of like this is coming down the pike and therefore we need to be prepared for it?
Yeah, absolutely knew that we needed to be prepared for it and was looking ahead to that. So we had actually added a module onto Intacct shortly before moving off of Intacct, actually, in order to support our UK venture. And it did actually cause some headaches. It was far from smooth in consolidating the entities and giving us proper reporting. However, One World was more of a breeze to deal with in having this international expansion, and I knew that we would expand into other countries in short order. So next year we're likely expanding into Mexico, and this year we also expanded our operations in Canada. So having One World and the ability to be in different currencies and have all these different subsidiaries roll in and consolidate was supremely important to us, and One World was definitely the best source for that.
Makes sense. And I assume then that's going to be, you're going to continue, like you said, adding in countries and adding in currencies and continuing to expand across the globe. So that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely, the Bisnow global takeover.
Awesome. One other point on this that I just want to ask about is the customizability. It says customizable. I think we've already talked about cloud and obviously why you need to be able to get it from anywhere. But talk to me about customizable and what were some of your requirements there that you really needed?
Yeah, so we had some issues around reporting in Intacct, and it was likely a little bit of this instance of Intacct and a little bit of limitations on Intacct. That we weren't able to create searches quite the way we wanted to create them. So the save search feature in NetSuite was also extremely important to us. As you can imagine, we have a host of events, and we need events to have their own individual P&L in order to assess profitability of events in different markets. This was a little bit of a challenge in Intacct, although we had that settled, but then there's other things that we want. We want P&Ls that house our digital products only. We want P&Ls that house maybe only New York versus other areas. We want P&Ls that house our different types of events, so all of our 3 to 4 hour events, all of our 8-hour events, all of our multi-day events. So in achieving that, it was a very dynamic environment. It was always changing. And in Intacct, creating these searches was considerably more arduous than it was within NetSuite, and in taking the customizable Save Search solution, which we did a bunch of customizing within NetSuite that was outside of just us customizing ourselves in the Save Search features. But this was important. It was important even for our integration with Expensify, which slips my mind half the time. But that was important, as you can create custom items, creating custom, all these different things that allowed us to integrate with the different systems a little bit more smoothly.
That makes sense. Thanks for that detail. To just, and I think we've talked a little bit about it. You've already alluded to some of this, but just on the valuation criteria, a couple that I'd like to drill on, because I don't think we've talked about it yet, but just what were on the did you look at? I mean, I guess how did you know NetSuite before this? And when you some of these things around upgrades and cost of ownership, did you talk about that as far as the criteria goes?
Yep. So I was familiar with NetSuite. I actually implemented NetSuite in my prior company as well. I worked at a startup here in New York, a finance startup. So did a bunch of the NetSuite implementation there. Actually owned the process there. So I was very familiar with it. But in my evaluation, this is a completely different business. That was a specialty finance startup. This is a commercial real estate events and media company. So the needs are very different. So my evaluation was, can you solve the problems that we're having, which we've laid out in earlier slides, and then are you affordable? As I mentioned a few times already, we definitely operate under the startup theory, the startup ideas, and wouldn't spend the type of money that perhaps larger companies could spend. So there was definitely a budget set out for this, and if NetSuite had come in double or triple what Intacct was, it probably would have also been a non-starter, unfortunately. So the ease of upgrades was important. I've seen the Suite app site work for some of my issues that I had at Kanban, so had faith it would work for the issues I have here at Bisnow, and also did a bunch of research on the companies that we use and how we can potentially integrate them using Suite apps or using some types of plugins. And then also what the cost would be to the company to have NetSuite versus Intacct. Thankfully, there wasn't a major difference there. And then, of course, the reporting capability. So everything from being able to do these safe searches, and especially, and probably most importantly, being able to do these on our own after implementation is done. During implementation, when there's a team helping us with these things, a lot more is possible. When you're on your own trying to create a safe search or trying to create a new reporting feature, it's a much different experience. So I wanted to make sure that the UI was something that me and the whole entire team could actually get around and start creating things on our own. So thankfully that was possible.
That makes a lot of sense, and that helps. I think that kind of addresses or talks to this whole simplicity bullet that's on the slide. But what about auditability? So what do you have any? You add any color on the auditability bullet that's there on the slide?
So auditability to me also goes a little bit hand in hand with the integration. Now when we have the audit team come in, or even if we need to go and investigate something in particular, we can look back through Salesforce straight into NetSuite, as opposed to going from Salesforce to an Excel doc, saved down somewhere, which could potentially be changed or moved by someone, and held in a repository like a Google Drive or a Dropbox or something like that, and then back to finally Intacct. Whereas here now with the simple integrations that we set up, we're able to now tie back to those systems and rely more heavily on them, and use a system like Salesforce to be the golden source for our sales, which it should be. A system like NetSuite be the golden source for our recognized revenue, and be able to tie them back and forth easily without editing anything.
There's no real audit trail for Excel. So now that you've got something happens in Salesforce, something happens in NetSuite, it's integrated and you track the details without that manual piece. Is that a fair way to parrot it back?
Yeah, exactly. And when we have errors with the syncing or anything like that that's going on, we're also able to quickly look at those, remap, solve the issues, and move forward.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think you've already described the Suite Apps piece, so that makes a lot of sense. So I'm not going to talk about that, but just let's talk a little bit about then the actual experience moving to NetSuite. So when did the selection process start? How long did that evaluation process take for you? And then how long did the implementation take for you?
Yep. So the evaluation process took, I'd say, probably 2.5 to 3 months in total from when I first decided that this was something that needed to change one way or another, whether it was a better built-out instance of Intacct, more modules or whatever it was, or a move to NetSuite or anything else that potentially needed to happen. It was probably a full 3-month process. I had actually, as I mentioned, already done this with another company, so it was a process that I was familiar with, and I was fully expecting a long road towards full implementation. Anytime you change the backbone of your finance structure, it's going to take a little bit of time, which is fine and expected. And I used the NetSuite implementation team both at Bisnow and at my previous company, so working with the team there was a breeze. Went up to their offices a couple times, talked through the statement of work, especially in a ton of detail, just to make sure that everything I needed out of the system was addressed within the document. And had a specialist on the NetSuite side that had dealt with Intacct integrations before. That was a huge help because I had actually never done an Intacct to NetSuite integration before. I had done QuickBooks to NetSuite, so this was a little bit of a different world for me. And my experience with Intacct was also somewhat limited. So I wanted to make sure that we were able to properly and efficiently get everything from one system to the other. So the help of the NetSuite team was huge there. And we had quite a few questions that would come up at the last minute. Hey, how do I export this? What's the best way to import this? How can I skip these 3 fields because it's not a piece of data that we have right now, and just upload these 10 fields or whatever it was. And even when I would send emails at all hours of the day, I would either get a response immediately within 15 or so minutes or get a response first thing in the morning the next day. So it was extremely helpful, definitely went the extra mile as mentioned here. And probably the most important thing in any implementation is testing to make sure that everything actually works. You can build and design anything, but things happen. Things break. So being able to test and having the whole plan set forth immediately on when we would test and the expertise of the NetSuite team was very important in ensuring that once we implemented and did go live, things didn't just break immediately.
That makes a lot of sense. And just on that point about integration, which it sounds like it was one of the most important part of the criteria, and obviously one of the most important challenges that you had. One of the questions actually that came in from the audience is when you do the synchronization between your different platforms, are you doing that in real time? Is that happening in a batch format? What was it before and what's it now?
So since we're a little bit of a small team, what I tried to do was take exactly the things that we 100% needed and the efficiencies that we really absolutely needed in the move to NetSuite and prioritize those over integrations with other systems that perhaps we didn't need right now at the moment. So some of the things that I prioritized were the link with Salesforce and the link with our banking partner. So those 2 things were prioritized and done as we rolled out the system. So immediately on the go live date, Salesforce was connected and our bank was connected. Once that was all said and done, the team had a little bit of extra bandwidth, so we were able to then implement our Braintree solution in order to integrate our ticketing settlement platform Braintree into NetSuite. And then we also focused on getting Expensify integrated into NetSuite so that all expense reports would seamlessly flow. So for, I'd say, a month or two, while designing, testing, and implementing those two solutions, we were manually doing them for a little while, but it was just we couldn't have prioritized every single thing all at once. It likely would have just been too large of a undertaking.
Oh no, and that makes sense. I'm actually asking a slightly different question. Although that was good. That's good information as well. Which is the integration as it, if you make a change in Salesforce, does that data flow automatically into NetSuite, or is that happening like on some periodic batch basis?
Oh no, that's happening in real time. Yeah, we have it all set up real time. So if, for example, a new event is added in Salesforce, it will be added in NetSuite right away.
Makes sense. So there's no delay or where there's an issue. Oh, sorry, that was in the Salesforce system, and we didn't know about it in the NetSuite side.
No, exactly. We wanted to prevent that from happening.
Makes perfect sense. So just kind of the last two areas, which I want to ask about. So just so now you've been running on NetSuite. Can you talk a little bit about just some of the improvements in your processes that you guys have been able to realize?
Yeah, so those Excel spreadsheets, once we finish some old sales, will be completely gone, a total thing of the past. So we've saved a bunch of hours on revenue recognition on a per week basis. As you can see here, probably 5 hours a week. We can access our data a lot faster and a lot easier. This is important because we can run the saved searches and I can find out exactly what expenses we spent by a particular person at a particular time. Since Expensify is now also integrated, invoicing is now automated. What we do is we tied our invoicing to our revenue recognition now. So anytime we have Salesforce send in a file saying, okay, this event has passed, we would recognize the revenue for that event in that month on that event and in that market, and then send out an invoice over to the customer. What this has done is obviously made our lives a little bit easier in having this integration with Salesforce that would send out invoices, but also make the customer's lives a little bit easier. You now know when you'll be getting an invoice from Bisnow. It'll be right after that event. So this has cleared up a lot of confusion on the customer side as to when they'll be invoiced, what they'll be invoiced for, and why they're invoiced. And this has therefore made collection easier because customers understand what's going on and understand that the event has just happened. A lot of times we were previously invoicing perhaps, one time immediate or quarterly, and maybe a client changed their mind and didn't want to sponsor the event on affordable housing, but instead wanted to sponsor the event on downtown Boston or something like that. So now all those changes aren't necessarily reflected in the invoices because the invoice is now at a time perhaps prior to the event. So this has streamlined our entire invoicing process and therefore our collection process.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead. I was going to ask another question on RevRec, but that's okay.
Sure. Okay. So better access to data. We're just in using the saved searches, we're able to actually access all the data within NetSuite pretty much at our fingertips, as opposed to the search functionality in Intacct truthfully wasn't the same. And our seamless flow from Salesforce, our CRM, to the finance team has been great. We're able to answer questions. We've actually gone through a large AR push to collect as much as we can outstanding before the end of the year, as most companies do. And that seamless flow has helped exponentially in just getting us the answers and the ability to tell clients exactly what's on every single invoice, why it's on that invoice, and what the backup for that is.
That's great, and that seamless flow is also great. The other question I was just thinking about, Michael, that I have to ask, just because anytime you talk about revenue recognition, I got to ask her, is 606 something that's going to be impacting you and Bisnow, and is it something that you've been looking into?
Yeah, that's something I've been looking into. I remember bringing that up in probably October of last year with the NetSuite team specifically to make sure that NetSuite wasn't going to impact our ability to implement 606 and move forward. So that's definitely been on my mind for quite some time.
Probably, unfortunately, more so than you'd like. I find 606 is unfortunately it's a big topic for a lot of finance professionals right now.
Absolutely, it's top of mind. In the accounting world, that's one of the exciting things, I guess.
Yep. Well, maybe the last question to kind of, and then we'll open it up to see if there's some audience Q&A as well, which is just kind of best practices, anything, just advice you would give for companies looking to make the move yourself, just in terms of evaluation, looking at the different solutions, anything you'd want to share that you would recommend to folks?
Yeah, so a couple things that I made sure I did even prior to going out and meeting with anyone was make sure I had buy-in from the executive team to look for other solutions. Going about something like this without full buy-in it should be a tall task all the way through. Thankfully, I did get that buy-in pretty quickly, pretty easily, and it gave me the mandate to go ahead and find something efficient and find whatever I could find at the best price I could find it. And then the next thing is identifying every single objective you need. I remember meetings back in, again, October of last year where I set out, okay, if invoicing cannot be automated, then you're going to have a tough sell getting me to move over to NetSuite because I have to do all this work in implementing a whole new system. If you can find a solution to do these things, then fine. I remember meeting with solutions experts and getting to the bottom of all of this and then presenting different ideas on how to actually get to this point. We actually ended up going with one of the ideas, of course, but that was extremely important, making sure that I'm not barking up the wrong tree and that NetSuite couldn't actually handle the 4 or 5 things I needed them to handle. I think when I saw the backing from Oracle, even before that, I had actually truthfully had some faith in NetSuite. I implemented them at my previous company, but the backing from Oracle was a huge plus. A plus from the cloud side, a plus from the security side, and a plus from just the investment side in total. I assume that would just add to the suite apps setup and just add even more companies that want to integrate with a system like this and being under the Oracle cloud, Oracle umbrella rather. And then having supportive partners in implementation. In this particular case, it was the actual NetSuite implementation team. Since I had worked with them before, I had faith in them, but meeting with them, having intro calls, all those types of things made this a lot smoother, and it had my faith level high in that team's ability to get the work done. And then, as I mentioned earlier, testing was one of the most important things. Thankfully, the NetSuite team had designed a whole plan with a lot of testing in mind, but it's one of those things that you can never have enough testing, especially with something as important as your entire financial system.
That's good. The testing piece is really good advice because I do think that is something that people tend to. It's not exciting, but it is definitely a critical one for sure, especially with all the integrations that you're talking about and doing. One point, Michael, you mentioned Oracle. The backing from Oracle was obviously a big piece of this, and helped add some comfort to it. So I have to ask the question, which is, so it's been more than a few months now. Now that we've been part of the Oracle umbrella almost a year now. I think it's almost been a full year. Have you noticed? What have you noticed, if anything? Things better, same, worse? Hopefully not worse, but just what have you noticed?
I actually haven't noticed any huge changes really, but one thing I have noticed is we've gone out to look at a new email marketing platform. That platform happens to be Eloqua. It's also under the Oracle umbrella. We are looking at different business intelligence and business analytics tools. Some of those are either under the Oracle umbrella or have plugins directly to Oracle products. So that it's kind of come up in our conversations a good deal of times and gives just a little bit more faith that we'll be able to not only plug in with NetSuite, but that Oracle will be investing resources in something like NetSuite, something like our email marketing platform, and other systems. So I think that's really where it's important, and it'll be moving forward 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line, when NetSuite isn't proven obsolete or anything because it's gotten the proper amount of investment. I know accounting kind of changes. There's new rules that come here and there, and we all have to be able to pivot with those rules.
For sure, and yes, and you're absolutely right. That will continue to be a big focus for us moving forward. Is continuing to make sure that we're integrated with the key parts of Oracle that will enable us. I've been, as I'm secretly a technology geek, and there's a lot of really cool Oracle technologies that you won't ever get exposed to directly. You won't necessarily have to see them, but things like bare metal cloud and things are going to be stuff that we're going to be able to take advantage of that hopefully will help on performance and integration and a number of things. So anyways, those more to come on that front over time. Well, what I want to do now, Michael, is just to give the audience a chance to ask some questions. If you do have a question, I think there's been a number of questions that have been coming in. They've been coming in through the Q&A, through that Q&A little panel. So keep those questions coming. And Michael, one of the questions that did come in that I want to ask, I think you may have mentioned it, but if not, I'll ask it anyways, which is, what's the integration platform? What are you using to provide that integration between NetSuite and Salesforce?
So we're using Celigo. We're actually using Celigo for Salesforce to NetSuite, and we're also using them for Braintree to NetSuite.
Great. And did you look at any others, or was that just was that one of the ones that we had thrown out there and it met the needs that you needed?
Yeah, it was one of the ones that NetSuite had thrown out there, and I had seen their name that did a couple other integrations. So I figured if we can use them for one and that's successful, perhaps we can start barking up that tree for other integrations. Makes sense.
And Michael, this question came in, but I'm going to vary it slightly. But you had experience with NetSuite before, so you kind of had some sense of what you were going to need in terms of your organization and skill sets to keep the system up and running. But you gave the advice that, hey, you got to think about not just the implementation, but after the implementation, we got to be able to be self-sufficient. So what types of skill sets would you recommend to folks that they really need to think about and really kind of build to keep the system up and running post-implementation?
So I know I'll back that up. I'll back up just a little bit and try to give as full of an answer as I can. I know there's an offer from NetSuite that will give you essentially like a turnkey system. You tell them all the requirements, they'll come in and sort of do the system in the background, build it out, customize it, and then deliver it to you and teach you a couple things, but deliver it to you. I think one of the important things that we did here at Bisnow during implementation was the controller here and myself sat and actually did all the sessions. So, 4 or 3 hours a day, whatever it was, twice a week, sitting and actually walking through everything and setting up the entities and doing the quote-unquote homework to set up when it's outside of those hours, because that gave us the ability and the confidence, truthfully, to be able to go in and set up, a custom item or set up different, perhaps, billing instructions, which we don't really do, but we could, and help us set up the different entities and all these different types of things because we were actually in it doing it. So I think that was important. But in terms of actual skills, it's really a user-friendly interface. It allows you the ability to go through and find things on your own, The search functionality also gives you that ability. So I've used that search box probably more times than I can actually count on all different things, everything from just something that I may have forgotten at the moment, but I know how to do it, or something that I just have no clue at all how to do it. And it's been able to walk us through a lot of those different problems. But the minimum requirements for most jobs, basic accounting and technical knowledge, technical being information technology, like those types of things, being able to use a drop-down, use a search bar, all those types of things likely suffice in keeping the system running. I think it's when you want to make updates, it's something like save searches, create custom CSV uploads, or editing some mapping, or we've even created our own dashboards. Those things could be a little bit on the tougher side and likely need a little bit of expertise. But again, provided you are sitting there doing the implementation yourself and intimately involved in the system, you're more than capable of doing this once go live hits.
Makes sense, Michael. Well, I think we're basically right at the top of the hour, and I really appreciate kind of the perspectives that you've given. There were a few other questions, but we'll answer those offline. So if you do have further questions, we'll answer those directly to you. Michael, I want to really thank you for spending time with us today, spending this hour with us on your day, which I'm sure is busy, and really appreciate the perspectives that you've shared. You've given us some definite things to learn about commercial real estate and your experiences, and we really appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. So thank you again for spending time with us, and thank you to the audience for spending time with us. And if you do have follow-on questions, please do let us know. This webinar was recorded, and we will have the archive available if you do want to watch any portion of it again, or do wish to share that with anyone within your organization. Thank you again for attending, and speak to you again in the near future.